Before we get started, please remember this podcast is for general educational purposes only. We're not providing medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your care. Welcome to Fertility Nurses Unfiltered. 2 nurses, 1 mic, no bullshit.
I'm Ashley LaRue, fertility nurse and founder of Fertilities.
And I'm Laura Wepler, fertility nurse and founder of Navigating Fertility with Laura.
You got questions, the internet has a lot of opinions, but what you really need is 2 fertility nurses who aren't afraid to tell the truth.
No scripts, no sugarcoating, just honest, evidence-based nurse-to-nurse conversation. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to our first episode of Fertility Nurses Unfiltered. I am so excited to be here. This episode is all about behind the scrubs. Ashley and I are going to be talking about our own fertility journeys, our stories, how we, got into this field, why we started this podcast, why we started our businesses. And so I think I posted a meme on our Instagram page last week that was us tearing up scripts, and truly that's what this is going to be. Neither of us have a script in front of us, so we're just going to be talking off the cuff. And I don't know, Ashley, I'm going to kick it over to you if you want to add anything to what I said.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be doing this and starting this. I think this is something, as soon as Laura and I got connected, I think this was something that we both very passionately wanted to do, was just talk about the real stuff that's happening. Fertility is real life. We've both worked in fertility clinics and are nurses, and we've seen behind the scenes. We've had our own fertility journeys in very different ways, which we're going to share with you. And so I think it was really important for us to, when we connected, we had this passion, like, hey, let's get together. Let's do this. Let's talk. Let's be real. I think that's what everybody just really wants is just openness and realness and transparency. And so I'm so excited to be doing this with you. Laura and I got connected actually, so not randomly, but we both joined a group called Matrikas. Yeah, kind of randomly. So shout out to Matrikas and Sally behind her brand there. So this group, or her group, brings together people in the perinatal, prenatal, postpartum, pregnancy space. So really just people that are trying to do good and change the spectrum that is reproductive health for individuals and couples navigating it. And so we got connected through that, of just people that are, trying to work together. And it's not about competition. It's about collaboration. It's about how do we
definitely
join forces to the more voices that are out there speaking that, like, hey, we need to change things. We can make things better, and we can do it with more voices and more people behind it. So I'm so thankful to Sally, so thankful to Matrikas, and obviously very thankful to Laura. And it's just been so great getting to know her on the back end. And I'm really excited for everybody to kind of see, kind of us and learn a little bit more about us. I think this episode specifically, the reason we're doing this one is fertility is very vulnerable. And I think in order for you all to get to know us and why we branched off and are doing what we're doing as fertility coaches, still nurses, is if we're asking you to be vulnerable and share your lives and your stories with us, it was really important for us to also be vulnerable with you and share our stories and give a little bit of background into us as people, not just nurses.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to piggyback off of that too, like to give an insider view of what it's like in the clinic. I don't know about you, Ashley, but I haven't seen anything out there in the podcast realm, in the fertility space, of like nurses actually talking about what it's like on the clinic. Like we see all sides of the spectrum. We see like what the physicians are carrying day in and day out, like on their patient load. We see what patients are carrying. Like we understand what's going on in the laboratory, what's going on, in the clinic, like operations day to day. And so to kind of bring that behind the scenes to the forefront, I think was important. And I also just wanted to say too, like, back to how we met. I remember when we got on a call, like, I don't know how many months ago it was now, but I remember I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like Ashley is my clone. Like we both just so passionately want to change what fertility care looks like for patients, because it is isolating. It is lonely, even if you have people in your space, like your spouse or partner or family. I've heard from so many patients that I've worked with just how still lonely they feel. And, you know, as we kind of dive into our stories, I can attest to that feeling having gone through my own personal fertility journey. So I'm happy to share my story first, or Ashley, if you want to go first. It's
No, kick it off. Let's do it.
Sure. Okay. Well, I tend to talk for a long time, so that may become a theme with these with these episodes. So if I do start to ramble, feel free to interrupt me. But so I started my fertility journey. Gosh, it was like 13, probably about 13 years ago now. My husband and I were trying, and at that point, like I was working in the hospital. I went into nursing thinking, I want to be a labor and delivery nurse. Like, I want to deliver babies. That just sounds really fun. And so, after working just on a general medical floor in the hospital for a few years, I switched over to labor and delivery, and I hated it. I hated it. I felt like it was a mini emergency room, because it is. Like,
Yes.
and I work the night shift. It could be nothing happening, and then you have a
Yeah.
patient coming in who's like fully dilated and ready to go, and you got to call the docs and you got to wake them up, and you know, all the things. I just didn't love it. So I didn't love too that these patients were in and out, right? And that's the
Mhm.
goal, right? You want them to have a easy, healthy delivery and go
Right.
home, but there's no time to really build connection
Yeah.
with those individuals. And that was actually one thing I liked about working on a hospital unit, is I really built connection with people who were there for a couple weeks at a time.
Mhm.
So, see, this is where we're already like 3 minutes into my story. I haven't even gotten to the main part. Anyway, so I was like, I'm going to do anything to get out of this space, but I want to stay in women's health. And so I started searching for jobs. At that point, I had no idea that fertility clinics and nursing was a thing. Like, I had heard about IVF. I didn't really know anything about it. I don't even think I could tell you at the time what IVF stood for.
Yeah.
Um, as like I said, my husband and I were trying, and I literally thought it was like have sex, pee on a stick a few days later, and boom, you're pregnant. And so I came across a fertility clinic listing, and I applied. And long story short, I got the job. And I remember, interestingly enough, the person who hired me, I remember her telling me that people who had come from the emergency room actually found sometimes fertility nursing to be even more strenuous, just because of the emotional intensity that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And there can still be like those emergency type decisions that get made in a clinic setting.
Yeah.
But I wasn't deterred. And I remember they sent me like a huge packet of information, like a giant binder of like onboarding materials before I even started. And I loved it. I like ate it up. I remember watching YouTube videos about like the menstrual cycle and like all of the different, you know, estrogen rising and LH surge and then progesterone. And like, I didn't know any of this stuff. They don't teach you this stuff in nursing school. Like, they
Yep.
do, it's at a very baseline level.
Yep.
So I fell in love with it. But as I was going through my onboarding and training, I kind of started to put some pieces together about my own kind of reproductive health. I was having very irregular menstrual cycles, and my OB had totally brushed me off. I'd been off birth control for like a year at this point. She was like, "Oh, it's totally normal to have like 45 to 50-day cycles. Like, no problem." And I remember thinking, like, really? Is that really okay? Um, Ultimately ended up doing some testing. To this day, don't really have a definitive diagnosis. Kind of PCOS, you know, having those irregular cycles. My ovaries had that PCO appearance.
Mhm.
I had a really high AMH level, but I didn't have any of like the clinical like hormone
Yeah.
imbalances. So we went through some IUIs. The first couple weren't successful. And then I went through my third IUI and I got pregnant. And I thought, great, this is it. That was, you know, that wasn't bad. I took some, I think I did Clomid for a couple cycles, and then I did Letrozole. I got pregnant, went through my first, like, I think it was like 7 weeks at the clinic. Like, baby was looking good. We saw a heartbeat, and I transitioned then to my OB, and there was no heartbeat. I remember it being like, I remember thinking like, you just don't know how to do an ultrasound. Like, your ultrasound machine is
Yeah.
shitty. Like, because at that point I could read an ultrasound. And I remember looking at the screen and I'm like, you just don't know what you're looking at. But they ultimately sent me down for like a full blown scan in the radiology department, and it was confirmed. And from there, things just like escalated really quickly. I ended up going through 2 D&Cs, followed by a hysteroscopy to actually clear out all of the tissue. So there was this like, I want to say it was like 3, 4, maybe even 5 months, honestly, to get through that entire ordeal. Yeah. We thought it was a molar pregnancy at one point. Because after my first D&C, I wasn't getting a period, like nothing was happening. So my REI was like, let's just check an HCG level. I think my levels were still like 10,000 plus. And this was like 3 weeks after my D&C. She was like, get in the ultrasound room. And both her and Jay, who was our ultrasonographer, like they were like, this looks molar. They sent me back to my OB. My OB was like, no, I don't think it is. I had to like really push to say I want another D&C like tomorrow, like whatever. Because, you know, when you've gone through a miscarriage, I could tell you the overwhelming feeling is like, I just need this resolved and I need it resolved right now. At least that's the way it was for me. I felt like, get this out of me. Yeah. And so had a second D&C. And then even after that, it still wasn't cleared out. So went back for a hysteroscopy like a month after that. Finally, everything was okay. Oh, the kicker there is they tore my cervix during the second D&C.
No. What?
So then I was like freaking out that I was going to like need a cerclage when I got pregnant again, and I was going to have an incompetent cervix. And I started having issues then with like fluid buildup in my lining. I think because there was probably some stenosis from healing. So I ended up, we were going to try like a mini FSH IUI cycle, which in my mind, I was like, if I have like PCO-like ovaries, this just doesn't seem good. I think we started my follistim dose at 25 units a day. She didn't want to she didn't want to overstimulate my ovaries. And eventually like nothing was happening. So we just converted it to an IVF cycle. And like a couple weeks later, I went to retrieval. Luckily, I only had to go through 1 egg retrieval, which was a blessing. I think I got 8 embryos from the cycle. But at that point, PGT was not really being done like as routinely as it is now.
Yeah.
And so we didn't test, and I couldn't do a fresh transfer because my progesterone had started to rise. So we skipped that, and I went into the first transfer like a month later. It was a chemical. And then, of course, I was devastated. But, you know, we see failed transfers happen. So I was like, okay, move on, do it again. I think the second one was like on my husband's birthday or something. It was like on a really important date. So I was like, oh, okay, great. This will be like meant to be. Second failed transfer. At that point, and at this point too, every time we were prepping me, I was building up fluid. So I was like, I'm never going to get pregnant again. Like I really started a spiral. I was thinking, I need a gestational carrier. Like clearly there's bigger issues here. I think I ended up like at that point, I was like, I need a break. So I took time off treatment, but we did an ERA biopsy. We did testing for endometritis, which I know now is Emma and Alice, but that didn't exist back then.
Right.
We thawed my embryos, which I never suggest anyone do, but we thawed my embryos. We PGT tested them, and I had 5 normal embryos. All boys, by the way, all boy embryos. That's like a topic for another day. And so it made no sense to me, right? It was like, okay, statistically speaking, the 2 transfers that I had that failed, like one of those should have been genetically normal, if not both. Like statistically, I should be pregnant by now. We did antibiotics for endometritis, even though it wasn't confirmed on the biopsy, just to like rule anything out. And I got pregnant on the 3rd transfer finally. So after like 2 years of just a whirlwind of treatment and heartbreak, I finally did bring my son home, who's now 9, which is insane to think about. That I have a 9-year-old. And then to wrap this up, because again, see, I ramble and I talk a lot. I do have now a second. So we, we had our remaining frozen embryos. I went back 2 years later, transferred him, and lo and behold, it took on the first time. Although the story with that is that my betas were abnormally rising. And so that's like a story, or, I know like betas are a big thing for our patient population. And so definitely something we could talk about. But I remember freaking out. I like went and I spoke with our psychologist who worked in the office, like right down for me. And even my RE was like, no, I think it's fine. And even she was consoling me. The therapist, she was like, you know as well as I know this isn't normal. Well, he's here, he's happy, he's healthy, but it was still terrifying. So now that I've rambled on, that is my story in what happened in my fertility journey. And that ultimately led me to, taking my work from the clinic to outside the clinic, because the clinic is great. Like sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I miss the clinical aspects. Like I liked doing IUIs. I liked, meeting face-to-face with patients, although I was doing this pre-COVID. It's been a long time since I've been in the clinic, but the piece that I really thought was missing was the emotional support. And, I always advocated when I worked in the clinic for primary nursing. Like I always thought it should be one nurse, one patient. And I got a lot of pushback on that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go do this elsewhere. Worked for a company for 6 years doing fertility coaching, and thought I could do it better. And so here we are. And I started navigating fertility with Laura. So so that's my kind of long and the short of it. But I would love to hear more on yours, Ashley, because I know this isn't something that we've really talked about yet. So I'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. And I think as you were talking, I was like, you hit so many different aspects of the fertility journey and so many pieces that a lot of our patients come with, right? And so to have that experience, I think is absolutely invaluable. But I think it also goes to show, like, even if you're a nurse, we're still human and we still need other people to help us through certain things, right? So nurses are supposed to be super strong. And if we're in the fertility field, we should know all these things, right? But when it's your own personal journey, things are different, right?
Totally.
And you absolutely, you need others supporting you. Whether you're a nurse, whether you know this backwards and forwards, whether you've been navigating something for years and years, just having knowledge, yes, but just a support person to bounce things off of, to understand, to just I don't know, just text and be
sounding board.
Yeah, even just texting and being like, this is super annoying. And to be like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, totally.
And just validating that you're not going crazy, because you're not going crazy. It is just fertility brings out just some of these pieces that you have zero control over. And that loss of control is so frustrating. And so anyways, I really appreciate you sharing that. I'm so happy you have your 2 boys.
Thank you.
And we can absolutely dive into all those other pieces, and there'll be great future episodes
totally.
on talking some of those things. My story is very different. And I tend to, I'll be honest, I tend to shy away from my story a lot, because it is very different in the fertility community to have my story. And I'll tell you why. It'll make some more sense here in a second. So professionally, I started out just like you. I started out in labor and delivery. Except I loved it.
Oh, that's great.
I absolutely loved it. However, I worked for a hospital that was very poorly managed, and we were put in very unsafe situations, and I did not love that.
Yeah.
So I ended up leaving labor and delivery, and then I've done OB, I've done MFM. For a variety of different reasons for my husband's job, we have moved to a variety of different places. I ended up being in New York in 2018. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. MFM jobs are really hard to come by. I wasn't really sold on getting back in the hospital. I knew they'd make me go back to night shift, which I am not a night person, so that is not my forte at all. I didn't want to start over there. So I was like, what am I going to do? And I had a friend who was a sonographer, actually an MFM, who worked part-time at the fertility clinic. And she's like, you would be great in fertility. You should look at IVF clinics and see if there's opportunities there. So that's how I got my start in IVF, in the fertility space. Throughout all of these years, my husband has a very high stress. He travels a lot. He's super busy. He's not home a ton. So we always sort of put off having kids. We got married very young, but we always sort of put off trying, or we always thought we wanted kids, but we just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off for one reason or another.
Yeah. Which I don't think you're alone in that. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just life, right? Life happens. It didn't feel like the right time for one reason or another. And so, so we just kind of kept putting it off. Health-wise, I had severe periods when I was growing up. I'm talking soaking through 3 to 4 pads in an hour.
Wow.
or tampons. I was passing out. I was throwing up. I had terrible migraines. I was beyond bloated, and very much like you on the PCOS side, I went to multiple doctors and kept getting pushed aside. Like, oh, your mom had heavy periods, so this is normal. It's just the way your body is going to be. We can put you on birth control, as most people with endometriosis hear over and over again.
Still today, right?
Still to this day, which is absolutely insane that we still get pushed off and still get, it's so beyond frustrating. And it honestly wasn't, even as in labor and delivery, same thing. Like you feel like you understand like the reproductive and women's health and stuff. But then when you start taking a step back and you go into like trying to conceive and actually the OB journey, you understand way more what's happening in our bodies. And in nursing school, they didn't teach us that. In middle school, when we were supposed to have health education and sex ed, they didn't teach us that. Right. Yeah. So we're already coming in with a deficit of understanding what's going on in our bodies, even as nurses. And so it wasn't
and it's not easy to understand too. I'll say that, like the menstrual cycle appears surface level to be much less complicated, I think, than it actually is underneath 100%. It all.
100%. And it's absolutely crazy too, that this goes back to like the support piece of it, right? Is you and I have spent our careers and months and years understanding the reproductive menstrual cycle, all these pieces backwards and forwards and upside down. But we expect our patients to just know it like that.
Yeah.
And just understand what's happening in your body and understand why we're giving you meds and understand all these pieces. And so anyways, that's a tangent for another day, but I 100% agree with you. It wasn't until I was working in MFM, I worked next to an OB office, and the OB, actually the sonographer that told me about fertility, scanned me one day because my that OB was like, you need to get a Mirena IUD. When I had gone off birth control, I was still dying every month. It was awful. I just like was not functioning. I was building my life around my periods because I was literally dying for like 2-3 days.
Oh, man.
And just like feeling terrible. So that OB was like, let me put a Mirena in you. And I was like, okay. And I had a friend in high school that unfortunately passed from a blood clot from birth control.
Oh, so wow.
I was extremely like I didn't want any hormones. I was scared of hormones because that was my experience and no one explained any of those pieces. So I was like, and she explained like the low dose and all that kind of stuff. We don't need to get into that. So she ended up putting it in. And then to scan it to confirm placement, this sonographer did the scan and she's like, have you ever been diagnosed with endometriosis? And I was like, no, but I'm pretty sure I have it. And she's like, you've got giant chocolate cysts. You've got like, even from a ultrasound, I can see so much tissue and stuff just not in the right spot. That is actually my confirmatory. I have never, very similar to you don't have a formal diagnosis. I still don't, to this day, do not have a formal diagnosis. But long story short, Mirena saved my life when it comes to that. we're fast forwarding back to we're in New York. I'm working for the fertility clinic. And again, putting off trying, putting off all these things. And I hit 35 years old. And I just like, my husband, we like sat down and we're like, it's either now or never, because I'm going to have to take out this Mirena. I have severe endometriosis. Like, I don't know what this journey is going to look like. Does it make sense? And we actually elected not to have kids. And so that's why like my journey is very different in the fertility space, but because I don't have kids and I get that question asked a lot. But I still have had sort of my own journey,
Absolutely.
reproductive journey. And I just ended up, because I have all the knowledge I have, I just ended up making decisions. Like everybody makes decisions in their fertility journey of what they're going to do and take and not do. I just elected not to even try and go down any of those paths, just given my age and just everything I knew it would entail. My husband is still working a lot. Like it just wasn't going to work. So I'm actually very happy and content with the decision that we've made. So we are childless by choice, but it is very much a reflection of life, my body, and understanding it so I can make those decisions.
Yeah.
But that I still had a point where, I had to grieve that part of my life that I was never going to get to experience.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that ends up being the case in the fertility space, not by choice, unfortunately. But for one reason or another, like, they end up coming out of it not having kids. And so I think the reason I say that it's a hard topic is sometimes I get a lot of negative pushback or feedback that like being in the fertility space or being a fertility coach without having like that experience just kind of puts me at a sort of like deficit, I guess. And I know it's crazy to like you and I, but
Oh man.
it was actually nuts. Actually, yesterday, knowing we were going to tell our stories, I was at the gym and I was talking to another girl that happened to be there, and she was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I told her, and she's like, "Do you have kiddos?" And I was like, "No, I don't." Um, and she was like, "Oh," she's like, "How do you work it? How do you do that? And you don't have kids?" And
That's
like,
so bizarre. What a bizarre question to me.
right? So, I mean, so anyways, that's my story. I think it's also it's shaped me very much into being extremely passionate about education and advocacy to make decisions for yourself that make sense for you. Um, and whatever those decisions are, nobody should tell you one way or another, or that your decision is wrong because you are making it for you. And it's very much shaped why I stepped away from the clinic. Also, I was hitting the same walls, trying to push forward the same type of support of one-on-one nursing, more handholding, more after-hours support that just doesn't
Yes.
exist, so people don't have to search for it in other places. And I was hitting those same walls. And so I decided to step out for that too. So
Oh
that
wow.
is my story.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I imagine that was a not an easy decision to like come
No.
to for you and your husband. And I think like for our listeners, like when you mentioned the woman yesterday at the gym
Yeah.
asking you, oh, like how can you work in that field and
Yeah.
not have kids? Like that kind of speaks to the same kind of insensitive questions that I think people in general get asked around trying to conceive. Like, oh, when
Absolutely.
are you going to have kids? Or like
Yes.
I was thinking about this. Like I had never asked you like if you had kids, right? Because to me, having worked in this space, like I don't know, maybe you are trying, like maybe it's a sensitive topic. And so
Right.
um yeah, I don't think that anyone has any business like dictating what other people decide, what's best for them. And clearly,
Yeah.
this is what's best for you. And I don't think that diminishes your experience and
Yeah.
your heart in working with patients who are navigating challenges. Like, I always think, I do think, just like any profession, right? There are good nurses and there are not great nurses. And
Of
I've
course.
seen nurses in the clinic fertility space who have children and yet are not necessarily the greatest, most
Yeah.
empathetic,
Yeah.
understanding fertility nurses. And I think the vice versa is true. And um, I think that when you go into this field, I really think it's like you fall in love with it or you don't. And
Yeah.
it sounds like
100%.
similar for you as for me. Like I walked into this space and I literally had one of those moments where I was like, oh my God, like I didn't know what I was put on this earth to do. Like I didn't really know what my purpose in life was. Like that's a really
Yeah.
big thing to think about. But I just absolutely fell in love with doing this work and providing the
Absolutely.
support. And again, like for you, I don't think that your uh, experience and the impact that you're making for the clients that you work with or the patients that you worked with in the clinic is by any means diminished by not having children of your own.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And I wholeheartedly believe that. But yeah, it's something that I deal with all the time because I agree with you. It's we've never really asked each other that question. I think when you're in this field, you just unless it comes up organically, I don't ask people if they have kids or
Yeah.
anything like that because like I don't want to bring up something that could be super hurtful or you never know what somebody's going through.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be actively going through a loss. They could, who knows where people are at. And so, unless if they want to talk about it, I let them organically bring it up, right? But yeah, I think it's in our society. I think that's the way people make small talk is, "Hey, do you have kids?" And I think a lot of people don't realize that it can be a very, very sensitive topic, and some people just don't want to share or bring it up, or quite frankly, it's no one's business. Some
It's
people
no
want to
one's business.
share,
Yeah.
which is great. And it brings out, that people aren't alone and people sharing their stories. But there are a lot of people that are like, I don't want to talk about this.
Well, I think about the statistics, right? I think the newest statistic is 1 in 5 struggle with
Yeah.
conceiving. That's a significant portion of the population.
Yes.
And so I think that is why it is not talked about as much as we think it maybe should be.
Yeah.
I think that voices are getting louder. I, for one, am a super open book. So, like, there is nothing, literally, I'm unscripted. There's nothing that I won't talk about when it comes to my own fertility journey. But one of the things that I was thinking about when you said, like, you never know what somebody else is going through. So, I've had this conversation with clients before. And in my own fertility journey, I remember being at like Target or the supermarket and there would be like and this is when I was going through treatment and I would see somebody who is pregnant and your immediate like
Yeah.
gut is just like I hate that person.
Yeah.
Like they have what I don't have.
Yeah.
And when I was in it, I that's how I felt and being out of it now and hearing and validating when I hear clients or patients say that one of the things that I've started to think about is we don't know what it took for that person to get pregnant and
Yeah.
how like maybe they had their own struggles and they have finally gotten to that point of
Yeah.
success. So I think it's an important message to leave with our audience is just, we can't judge what's going on in someone
Yeah.
else's life. And
Yeah.
yeah, there might be those few people that we know who like literally had sex one time and lucky them,
Yep.
they got pregnant right away. But I don't think that's the reality for the majority of people.
Yeah.
And like I said, certainly, 1 in 5 go through a journey of their own.
Yeah. And I think too, what's also really important, I think about both of our stories that we can very much overlap on is the OB space can be better.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh,
I cannot tell you how many times and there are some wonderful OBs and practitioners out there,
yes.
but I have heard over like there are some not great ones out there as well. And I think if somebody out there is listening and you're sort of like trying to conceive, it's taking a long time, you're not sure, you're getting pushed off from PCOS endometriosis, something's wrong, but no one will take you seriously. I think this just speaks volumes to like keep trying, keep pushing. You're not crazy. You're not, your body. If you feel like something is wrong or not normal, somebody will listen to you.
Yeah, get a second
Um,
opinion.
yeah,
Like,
that goes
please.
for OB, that goes for REIs, that goes for any place, anyone that you are talking with, you are not stuck where you are just because, oh, you've gone to them once or twice or something, or you've done a cycle with them before. But it's okay to say, you know what, I'm just not getting what I need here. I'm gonna try and find that elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I agree, especially too. I have this conversation a lot with people, especially when it comes to their REI, is like second opinions are never bad.
Yeah.
Because if worst case scenario, you're going to get a second opinion and it's just going to validate what you heard from the original physician that you were
Right.
seeing. But I think as well as I, like REIs, a lot of them practice similarly, but there's a lot of differences amongst clinics and physicians and the way that
Very
they
much.
practice and view things. And so it's never a bad idea to get a fresh perspective on what is happening in your fertility journey. It may not change. I tell people all the time, maybe you'll stay with your same provider. That's great. And it just
Yep.
validates that you're in the right place.
Yeah. 100%. And I think knowledge is power, right? Whether, you get a second opinion, whether you are, seeking a coach or somebody else just to like talk to and get, or somehow you are educating yourself. Knowledge is power. And I think the more you know, the more you feel comfortable having those conversations with whoever you're having it with. And ultimately you're just going to feel more confident and more comfortable in the decisions you're making, the choices, and just feel a little bit more at ease with your journey,
Yeah.
because there are going to be bumps and there are going to be twists and turns and months long of waiting or doing something, and you're going to be like, what, like, is this it? What am I doing? Is this worth it? Am I doing all of this thing? Like, there's so many questions, right? And we second guess ourselves all the time. um Somebody told me the other day, I don't remember who I was talking to, but I was talking about kind of the coaching and what I'm doing and things like that. And somebody said that women will always find a way,
Ah,
which I thought it's such like an easy sort of, but like, we will always, if you think about it, like, we're always, whatever we're faced with, we're just going to figure it out. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're just going to figure it out because we're strong and we're badasses and we can handle anything. Which I think is so
absolutely.
powerful. But in the same token, we're still human, right? So, like, yeah, we're all strong. We're going to figure it out. People, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have gone through fertility treatment and haven't had the right type of education or support. And we've just figured it out because that's what we do. But do we have to do it? Should we settle for that just because that's what the society is and that's what the healthcare system's giving us? No, we shouldn't.
No,
We
no.
should be searching for better. We deserve better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that knowledge is power, like you said. And this journey is not linear. One of the biggest things that I like to drive home is just how not linear fertility treatments are. There is no two patients who are exactly the same, that are working with the same clinic, are the same age, have the same spouse. I certainly hope not.
Let's hope
Um,
not.
Right. I mean, there's just so many nuances that go into this journey. And so I think it's really easy for us as independent women to think we're going to figure this out on our own. But a lot of what we do, especially in this day and age, is we pick up our phones and we go to Google and we
Yep.
try to search for those answers. And then it takes us down this rabbit hole. And I think the reason that we do that, right, at least when I was going through my journey, I was trying to find somebody out there who would validate my
Yep.
story and my experience. And if that person ultimately found success, okay, now I can breathe easier, right? Because
Yeah.
if they had the same journey as me and they were
Yeah.
successful, then there's hope.
Yeah.
The problem is our Google twin does not exist.
I love that.
Google's not a crystal ball. I wish it was. I wish that I had a crystal ball and I could tell patients like
Yeah.
how things are going to end. I think both of us, right? Neither of us make any promises to anybody. There's nothing that anybody can do to ensure success. But we can give you the tools and the guidance and the support and the education to make the best decisions for you along your journey to get you where you want to go the quickest and the most efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it perfectly. And I think this, you brought up Google. I think, you know,
Oh, it's the bane of
this
our existence.
and like social media, right? And you and I have talked about social media and stuff. And there's some good that like double-edged sword, right? There's some good that has come out of more people speaking up on social media.
Yes.
There is a community out there and people talking about it and sharing their journeys and being like, and it just again makes you, like, just like you said, it makes you feel less alone. It validates that what you're going through is not crazy, and your journey is extremely valid. But on the same token, two things. One, so much misinformation, so much of just like, do this, try this, I got pregnant doing this, all these things. And because we're so vulnerable and we care so much about this journey, we're going to try and grab onto any of that. And people are just, it's such like a salesy thing. Fertility's become a salesy thing, and it's very icky to me.
Yes, I agree. I think this is why both you and I struggle with this.
We do struggle with social media
because I don't want to come across as icky and salesy. That's not my jam.
Yes. No, we are in the same boat. It's not our favorite by any means. But I think the second thing too is comparison. Yes. Just what you said, like,
exactly what I was thinking.
It's great that you found somebody else that's kind of generally going through the same journey, and you had like, it validates all these things and it makes you feel less alone, and it's so great. But in our minds, we automatically are like, well, if they got it, why did they only have to do one egg retrieval?
Yes.
And they had success and I'm on my fifth.
Yep.
Like, but we both have endometriosis. We both have PCOS. Why did it take them longer, short? You know what I mean? Like, so then like there's a double-edged sword to this. And so I think it's however you need to protect your peace, find your community. If that is in social media, fantastic. If it's not, don't feel like, you have to be doing all these things, or there's other places to find support and other places to find that community.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes like this, the comparison goes back to like, it's not linear, right? We don't treat fertility the same way in every individual.
Yeah.
And so to your point of comparison, why did somebody have one egg retrieval and someone had 5? Well, let's look at the differences between those two individuals, right? Maybe one person is in their early 20s and they have an abundant supply of eggs and there's no issues with sperm, and they went ahead and they did an egg retrieval and they got pregnant. And then maybe you have somebody on the reverse side who's in their early 30s but has premature ovarian insufficiency and now has to do multiple egg retrievals just to get a few healthy embryos. So you just cannot compare your journey to somebody else. And I agree, it's so important to find community. You need to build the village that works for you, and that can include friends, family members. It can include, nutritionists, acupuncturists. It can include fertility coaches such as Ashley and myself. It can it includes your doctor, your nursing team, but whoever it is, like, build your village around you. Because I see so many people fall into this isolation when they're going through treatment and pulling back. And I've seen family members and friends, unfortunately, push family members away too, because they feel like I can't deal with this person. They're anxious all the time, or their whole life is revolving around fertility. But truly, when you're in it, like, it is all consuming. And every part of your day is dictated by your journey. And you're constantly thinking to yourself, if I do this, is that going to somehow affect, or my stress level is high, right? We could have a whole episode on stress, right?
Yes.
And this discussion and awfulness out there of like, don't be stressed because then you'll negatively impact your ability to get pregnant. It just drives me crazy because it's like the number one belief that people have. Now I lost my train of thought. This happens to me all the time. But essentially, right, like, everything that we do day in and day out, what we eat, the activities that we do, restricting exercise because we were told we can't do,
Yeah.
we can't work out during IVF. Like, that's true, but there's still proactive things that you can do
Yeah.
to keep moving. And yeah, it just becomes all consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, community is so huge, and community doesn't have to be a big, like, community sounds like a bunch of people, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be. It can
No.
be 1 or 2 people that know what's going on, and the rest of it, like, you just have an answer when people ask you those are really annoying questions that you don't wanna answer, to just avoid it. But I think community can be whatever you make it out to be, but I think what hinders some people from sharing or finding community is everyone has an opinion, right? And it just goes back to, like, my story with the person at the gym, right? Even like, I mean, I'm not even going through a fertility journey. I just happen to share that one little piece that I don't have kids and I work in the fertility field. Those two innocent things, and somebody had an opinion that I shouldn't work or I couldn't work in the space, or how can I do this?
Yeah.
And so
Nuts.
it doesn't even have to be like sharing a bunch, like, anything, but everyone has an opinion about everything. And so even if you're not sharing, someone's going to say something. And then you're going to be like, well, I don't want to talk about, like, I don't want to share this with this person, or I
You're
don't
going to
want
pull back. You're going to
you're
shut
going to
down.
pull back even more and shut down even more, because people, like, there's so many different opinions out there. So find your community. It can be big, it can be small, but at least one person that you can share with, because holding it all in is not going to help you at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So what do you think then, given all this and all the stuff we're talking about, what do you think ultimately shaped, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but what do you think your journey, professional, personal, sort of bridge that into what you're doing now?
Yeah.
For navigating fertility with Laura, like, where did that come from? What's the passion behind it? How do you think your journey has shaped what that looks like?
Yeah. So I think what I'm really proud of is that I have this dual perspective from both the patient and the clinical side of what it's like to go through fertility treatments. And I always come back to the fact that, I literally lived fertility in my personal and professional life 24/7. I would go to work and I would sit with other patients in their grief, or sit with them and teach them on, what was going on in their fertility journey and how to do injections. And, like, I could answer questions in the clinical setting and with confidence. And I felt, you know, optimistic for my patients as they were going
Yeah.
through treatment. And yet I couldn't apply that to myself. And
Yeah.
here I was sitting with all of the knowledge, right, that I had. And I still, like, it's different when it's you.
Yeah.
It's like somehow I was the outlier to the own advice that I would give the patients
Yeah.
that I was working with. So for me, I think I can put myself, when I'm working with someone, kind of back into that perspective, and even recognize that they have a much more limited scope of what treatment looks like, because they didn't learn it, right?
Yeah.
I had the value of learning it all. I think that, it's lonely. I was lonely going through my own fertility journey. And I had my doctor, like, I mean, most patients, I think that's a huge thing. I'm sure you hear it all the time, is that, hey, I've only talked to my doctor like once or
Once or
twice. I
twice.
can
Yeah.
never talk to my doctor. I'm always talking to the nurses. And we can talk. I think it's important to kind of hit on that aspect at some point on why that is.
Yeah.
But I had access to my doctor. And I still felt like guilty asking her for time, or for her to answer my questions.
Yeah.
Or I had the nurses in the office to support me. And I will tell you, I still felt very unsupported. I felt like a burden. Like,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah. I think
burdening
a lot of
them.
people feel like that.
Yes, I think
A
so.
lot of people feel like that.
And I think a lot of people hold back their questions because they're afraid of sounding stupid. I hear it
Yeah.
all the time from people like, oh, I have a question. It's a dumb question. I'm like, there are no
Yeah.
dumb questions. Like,
It's
truly, there are really no dumb
There's
questions.
really no dumb questions, and I think some people too of like, "Oh, I've already asked all these questions," or "I don't wanna be that patient." Like, you're not that patient, like,
No,
none of us nurses sit around and be like, "Oh, they
no.
asked a question again." It's like
Right. No, I agree. And the other thing too with that, I mean, I think I'm kind of going off topic from the question a little bit, but a lot of the country is self-pay for this treatment.
Yeah,
I live in Illinois where we're state mandated. And so for the majority of people, or I shouldn't say the majority, but for a good portion of the population of Illinois, they have coverage for treatment. That
yeah.
is not true in most of the United States. It's
No.
not getting better. And if you're paying $25,000 to $35,000 a cycle when you add it all together, like, I'm sorry, you should be able to advocate and ask any darn questions you want to ask. Like,
Anytime you would like to.
absolutely. And the fact that
Absolutely.
patients feel so suppressed that they can't ask
Yeah.
questions, I think speaks volumes to how broken the system really is.
Very much, and not to take you off of what you're saying, but I think it's really important that you mentioned the state thing. That geography can really dictate
Oh my
what
gosh,
you
yes.
like. I live in Tennessee, which the South and a lot of the South is fighting even for reproductive rights.
Right.
We're not even fighting for mandates. We're just fighting for the fact that we want to have families
Yeah.
and we need some support to do that.
Yeah.
So the fact that, some states you have a mandate, so you have more access, you have more financial means. When you go into other states, you may not even know if IVF will exist tomorrow. I mean, we all saw what happened in like Alabama and things like that. So I think it really brings up a really good point of, yeah, there's a lot of people that are finances make a huge, they make a lot of your decisions, right? They dictate a lot of your decisions, unfortunately, but it's important. You have to make them.
Yeah.
If you don't have insurance coverage or very minimal coverage, you have to make decisions based off of finances.
Yeah.
And it's again, that's it's really sad.
It's heartbreaking. It
It's
really is. And
heartbreaking.
and I think especially for you and I, like one of the things I don't remember if it was at a conference, I think it was, where one of the speakers was saying, look, if you want to get pregnant, like there is always something that we can do in the fertility space. Now, to that degree, not every treatment plan is right for every patient and
Right.
not every patient is comfortable with some of the options out there. But my point is that there's always a way that we can work with someone to achieve the end goal. The difficulty with the financial aspect and I think the emotional aspect is that so many people drop out of treatment because of both of those barriers and
Yep.
never get to see
Yeah.
that reality come true because they've been basically ousted by the system, both
Yeah.
again financially but also
Yeah.
emotionally. One of the statistics I really like to hit on is that the number one reason people drop out of treatment is not financial, it's emotional.
Yeah.
So even for those in Illinois where I am who do have coverage, we see people drop out of treatment because they feel unsupported by the
Yep.
system.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that just speaks to kind of what you and I are both doing, right? Is we've recognized that we've been in the system, we've been in clinics, I mean, I was even on the corporate side of a very large fertility practice that has clinics all over the country. So I saw a lot of the business side of it and I didn't like what I saw.
Yeah, same.
And that'll be another episode maybe for another time. We'll get really unfiltered on all of that. But yeah, we saw that we're getting further and further away from human support, real support, individualized support. We're getting way more AI, text, social media, those kind of things. And there's good and bad to all of it. But I think that's what you and I saw was
Yeah.
just people should be able to talk to someone one-on-one that you get along with, that happens to be very educated in the field. Maybe they have their own journey, maybe they don't, but as long as they're very educated in the field, they're going to help you along your journey and you should have access to that person. You should be able to contact them when you're sitting there at 6 p.m. at dinner, 7 p.m. at dinner, and you and your significant other are talking about this.
Well, because
You
that's the
should,
reality. That's when
that's
the
the
questions
reality.
that's when the
Yeah.
questions come up. I mean, that's the crazy.
Fertility happens at home.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you're in the clinic for maybe 20 minutes and yeah, okay, you're portaling and you may send a voicemail, but it's going to be a little bit before you get a response. And they're only open so many hours. So what do you turn to? Social media, AI, Google, all these places and then you're just going to get generic responses and like, is this right? I don't like, so I
well,
think
and
that's
AI too. I just sorry to interrupt you. I just want to
no.
hit on the point of AI is that AI is it I yes, it's artificial intelligence, but it's basically a super powered Google search engine. It is pulling
Yeah.
dynamically from sources all over the internet. Some of those sources are valid and some of them are
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so I've seen AI apply statistics to patients before that those don't
Yeah.
account for the individual nuances of that patient that AI just simply can't know because it doesn't have all
Yeah.
of the information. And it also, AI is real good at I would say when I interact with AI, like it's real good at trying to make you feel like good and like reassuring.
Yeah.
But it's
It wants
not
to
a
agree with you.
it wants to agree with you, but it's not a human. Well, actually on that note, so this is totally off tangent a little bit, but AI, I think, really will start to adapt to how you think. Actually, I
Mhm.
know that's true, but it's funny. My husband and I will have really silly arguments over stupid things. One of them is we'll argue on categories. So he's gonna laugh because I'm putting this out there. But we had this question, this had to have been like 10 years ago, and it was things that are in the sky that start with, I think it was like P, and somebody put power lines. And so I was like, power lines are not in the sky, like they are connected to the ground. Anyways, where I'm taking this is both of us, it was like a week ago, put this into ChatGPT individually. I put it into mine and he put it into his. Mine agreed with me. Absolutely not. Right. And I think we
Yeah.
worded the question similarly. And his was like, absolutely, like you could make arguments, right? And so
Yeah.
it just goes to show you like how flawed AI
Yes.
really can be and how it's going to skew to the way that you're wording questions about your fertility journey because it's starting to sense like what you need from it. So it could be
Yeah.
falsely reassuring at
Yeah.
times, and I think it can be falsely like under reassuring because it doesn't have all the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to mess with AI sometimes too, and I'll try and like try and get like statistics for certain things. And I'll even say, give me recent evidence-based this for, statistics for whatever it is. And it'll still pull up stuff from like Wikipedia and Reddit and some of these places. I'm like, that's not evidence-based.
No.
So and that's where it's pulling a lot of its content
Right.
is from these places that are not evidence-based. They're not 100% reputable. You don't know who wrote any of that and if that was correct or not.
And it
Um,
just overall, it doesn't humanize things,
yeah.
right? Like when I meet with my clients that I'm working with, like I don't want to just know about their fertility. Like I want to know who they are as people. Like
Yeah.
somebody I'm
Yes.
working with right now, like she told me a couple weeks ago that she has cats. And I was like, I need to see pictures of your cats. Like that's part of your family. That's part of
Yes.
what makes you
Yes.
you. And it
Yes.
helps me to like get to know you as a bigger picture and you're
Yeah.
not just your
You're
medical
you're
file.
not just your fertility journey. It's a
Yeah.
big part of you. It's a big part of your goals. Yes, and that's why we're here to support it, but I 1,000% agree with you, and I think that's one of the things that misses from the clinic too, is because clinic is so clinical, medical, boom, 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 we've gotta get you your instructions or your results and explain things and move on. Um, I think that's why a lot of our patients feel like a number, right? It just feels very boom, 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 very clinical, and I think that's one of the ways that this is very different is not only do you get clinical medical expertise in a coach, but you also get somebody that like, hey, how was that dinner the other night? I knew you were
Yeah.
going to wherever, and you know, I always say this, I say this a lot on some of my stuff. It's just like, we're like an educated best friend.
Yes,
I
totally.
want to know what's going on in your life, because you are not just your fertility journey. You have a whole nother life outside of this. You have work, you have maybe a significant other, maybe you have other kids, maybe you have pets, maybe you go skydiving. Like, whatever it is, like, I think it's so cool getting to know people. And I think that's what a lot of our patients really crave, is just the human aspect of it. Somebody that's actually listening, that's educated, can help them make, yes, all their fertility decisions, all of that, but also just like somebody that you can just text and talk about whatever, because other people don't know that maybe you're going through your journey. So
yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I swear, every time we talk, I'm like, we are the same person. Because I say all these same things. Like,
I know.
Your fertility best friend. It's so true. Like, I mean, your best friend's the person that you open up with, that you feel comfortable asking the dumb questions, right? And that's, I think, what you and I aim to be for people. Absolutely. And I think through this podcast, right? Like, we've been talking for almost an hour now, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of like all the things that you and I want to say and want to share. And that's why I'm so excited to like continue and get into it and bring guest speakers on. And to that note too, like if you're listening, if there's something that you want us to talk about, like please like DM us on Instagram, email us. We're fn.unfiltered@gmail.com. Like reach out, let us know what you want us to talk about, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. There's so many different tangents I think you and I could go on and dive deeper into. And I think that's exactly why we wanted to do this and why we really connected on like, we don't love social media. We're not sure how to get out there and be real and be unfiltered. Cause like, let's be real. It's real life. Like, let's be unfiltered. Let's not put a cap on things and hide things. No, we're going to blow it open, and we're going to talk about these things, and we're going to be real with our experience professionally, personally. And we hope that resonates and connects with those that are listening. So I'm really excited to dive into some of the topics we have planned, but I agree, if anybody out there has any thoughts or want to hear more on a specific topic or learn more on something, reach out. We are absolutely all ears.
Yeah. And I just want to point out too that our email is fn.unfiltered. And that was not on purpose.
You tried to not laugh when you said that.
Somebody else pointed it out to me, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of awesome that it worked out that way.
Like, it kind of does.
Nurses, but effing unfiltered.
Effing unfiltered. Maybe that's how we end things. Effing unfiltered.
Absolutely. Well, I think next time, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking all about like what happens between fertility clinic appointments, right? And I think we've delved into that topic a little bit today about the spiraling, but I think there's so much more that we can deep dive into. So again, if there's specific questions that you want Ashley and I to address during our next episode, email us, DM us. You can DM us on our Instagram page or individual Instagram pages, whatever you're comfortable with. But we are so excited that you listened. If you're still here, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Laura, for doing this. And I'm excited for what this grows into and becomes for our listeners.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, everyone, have a great week. We'll see you next time.
If this conversation resonated, like, comment, or subscribe, share, send us your questions. Nothing is off limits.
And wherever you are in your journey, know this: you deserve support that's real and human. Never forget to ask your questions, advocate louder, and remember, you're not crazy. Fertility is hard.
That's it for today's episode of Fertility Nurses Unfiltered. Thanks for spending your time with us today.
We'll see you next time.